Let's get right into it. Number 10. You're folding laundry, thinking about absolutely nothing, and suddenly your brain plays a specific clip from 11 years ago on full volume. Not a summary, not a vague feeling. A full sensory replay, tone of voice included. Psychologists call this an involuntary memory, and it's different from the kind you deliberately search for, like trying to recall what you had for lunch yesterday. One process is purposeful, where you go looking for a memory in your mind. The other is unintended and spontaneous, popping in uninvited. Involuntary memories don't need a reason to fire, they just need a loose thread to pull on. Compare it to a browser tab you never closed, still running quietly in the background until something randomly brings it back to the front. The strange part isn't that the memory shows up. It's that it always seems to know exactly which moment will hurt the most, arriving fully formed, with nothing you did anywhere in the last 10 minutes as an obvious trigger. Somewhere right now, someone's just standing in a grocery aisle, blindsided by a version of themselves from over a decade ago. Number 9. There's a term clinicians use for the very specific full-body flinch that hits when an old, embarrassing memory resurfaces out of nowhere. It's called a cringe attack, and despite the casual name, the reaction is entirely physical. Not just mental discomfort. Actual muscle tension, sometimes a groan escaping before you even register why. These attacks tend to happen during mindless moments, in the shower, folding laundry, doing something that leaves your mind free to wander. The reason is almost mechanical. An idle brain has spare processing power, and spare processing power apparently loves searching your worst memories like it's doing inventory. One clinical psychologist has noted that people who are especially self-critical tend to experience these more frequently, since the brain keeps circling back to moments it's flagged as violations of some internal standard. Compare it to a smoke alarm that keeps going off years after the actual fire, still convinced there's smoke somewhere. The body doesn't know the danger already passed. It just knows the alarm worked once, so it keeps testing it. Number 8. Somewhere in your brain right now sits a specific memory, wired directly to a smell, a sound, or a physical location, waiting for that exact trigger to show back up. Memories aren't stored like separate files in a cabinet. They're stored in overlapping networks, connected by shared context, emotion, and sensory detail. Researchers have found that one small trigger, a certain smell, a particular tone of voice, a matching room layout, can activate an entire chain of linked memories at once, cascading outward from a single starting point. That's why an unrelated smell in a grocery store can instantly summon an event from 15 years earlier with startling clarity. It's less like flipping to a page in a book, and more like pulling one thread that happens to be knotted to 6 others. The blunt truth is that your brain never actually organized these memories for your comfort. It organized them for retrieval speed, and retrieval speed doesn't care how much you'd rather forget. Number 7. Adrenaline does something specific to memory that most people never think about. It makes the moment stick far harder than anything ordinary happening around it. During an embarrassing event, your body floods with stress chemicals, the same physiological response triggered by genuine danger. One clinical psychologist working in trauma research has explained that this adrenaline surge sharpens awareness dramatically in the moment, which means the brain ends up encoding those seconds with unusually high resolution. Years later, revisiting a similar situation, even loosely similar, can reactivate those same physical sensations, not just the memory of them. That's why an old embarrassing moment doesn't just feel remembered. It feels relived, complete with a racing heart and flushed face, decades after the original event ended. Compare it to a photograph shot in perfect lighting, while every other photo from that day comes out blurry. The clarity isn't a coincidence. It's biology deciding in the moment that this particular memory mattered enough to overexpose. Number 6. Depression and anxiety don't just affect mood in the moment. They actively change which memories your brain chooses to serve up first. This is called Mood-Congruent Recall, and it means a low mood tends to pull up matching low memories, not random ones. Someone having a rough day is statistically more likely to suddenly remember an old failure or humiliation than a pleasant, unrelated memory from the same era. Over time, repeatedly reliving those specific memories reinforces the neural pathways connecting them, which makes future recall even easier and even more frequent. It's an uncomfortable feedback loop, where a bad mood fetches a bad memory, and the bad memory then deepens the bad mood. Compare it to a search engine that quietly learns your worst searches and starts suggesting them first, unprompted, based purely on today's mindset. The brain isn't being cruel on purpose. It's just running an algorithm nobody consented to, optimized entirely for emotional consistency instead of comfort. Number 5. There's a concept researchers call the Reminiscence Bump, and it explains something strange about which decade of your life your brain keeps replaying the most. Adults tend to recall a disproportionate number of memories from adolescence and early adulthood, roughly ages 10 through 30, compared to any other life stage. That includes the good memories and, unfortunately, an equally large share of the excruciating ones. The theory is that identity formation happens hardest during that window, so the brain encodes those years with extra emotional weight, treating them as unusually significant regardless of whether the moment itself actually mattered. That's why a cringeworthy moment from age 15 can resurface with more clarity than something that happened last month. Compare it to a photo album where one random decade got triple the film rolls for no logical reason. Your 20s barely stood a chance against your 14-year-old self's worst hallway moment, and apparently neither did the rest of your memory archive. Number 4. Social anxiety doesn't just make future social situations feel uncomfortable. Research has linked it directly to a higher frequency of intrusive, embarrassing memories overall. People with heightened social anxiety experience more frequent unwanted flashbacks, specifically tied to past humiliation or judgment, a pattern that reinforces itself the more it happens. The fear of embarrassing yourself again and the memory of embarrassing yourself before end up feeding directly into each other, creating a loop that's difficult to interrupt on willpower alone. It's a strange kind of internal surveillance system, one that keeps replaying old evidence specifically to justify caution in situations that haven't even happened yet. Compare it to a security camera that keeps looping old footage of a break-in long after the locks got changed. The break-in already happened once. The brain, unconvinced that danger has actually passed, keeps running the tape anyway, just in case anyone forgot the lesson the first 50 replays already taught. Number 3. The instinct to suppress an embarrassing memory the second it surfaces feels obvious. Push it down, move on, don't dwell. That instinct usually backfires. Suppression isn't especially effective, since the memory tends to resurface anyway once the pressure of actively pushing it away eases off. Trying not to think about something requires the brain to keep checking whether you're still not thinking about it, which paradoxically keeps the memory active instead of letting it fade. It's the mental equivalent of telling someone not to think about a specific word, and watching that word become the only thing they can think about for the next 10 minutes. A more effective approach, according to clinicians studying this pattern, involves identifying what actually triggered the memory instead of shoving it away entirely. Compare it to trying to hold a beach ball underwater versus just letting it float where you can see it. One method exhausts you indefinitely. The other, oddly, tends to end the struggle faster. Number 2. Not every uninvited memory is created equal, and the ones tied to guilt behave differently from the ones tied to simple awkwardness. Cringe attacks specifically bring back moments where you feel you got caught doing something wrong, dumb, or ridiculous, essentially violations of your own internal rulebook rather than just clumsy accidents. That distinction matters because guilt-based memories tend to resurface with a sharper emotional sting, since the brain treats them less like embarrassment and more like unresolved business. One clinical psychologist working with these patterns has pointed out that self-forgiveness, actively deciding the old version of you deserves some slack, measurably reduces how often and how intensely these memories return. Compare it to an unpaid bill that keeps showing up in the mail until someone finally settles it. The memory isn't malicious. It's just persistent, quietly waiting for you to close out an account you never technically closed. Number 1. Every single reason on this list points toward the same uncomfortable conclusion. Your brain isn't malfunctioning when it drags up an old, embarrassing moment. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do, flagging socially risky behavior so you're less likely to repeat it. The system was built for small tribes, where public humiliation carried real survival consequences, reputation being closely tied to whether the group kept feeding and protecting you. Modern life removed most of those stakes, but the alarm system never got the memo, so it keeps firing off warnings for a threat level that mostly doesn't exist anymore. Compare it to an outdated security system still guarding a building that's been empty for years, wiring fully intact, purpose long expired. The next time an old memory ambushes you out of nowhere, it isn't punishment. It's an overprotective, slightly obsolete piece of software, still trying badly to keep you safe from a room that emptied out a long time ago. That's 10 reasons your brain won't let old moments go. If you liked this, subscribe for more.